A warm welcome to all the viewers. In today's session of Tourism and Hospitality Research, I'm going to discuss about configurational analysis, which is done in fsQCA software. fsQCA, standing for Fuzzy Set Qualitative Comparative Analysis, is a method by which you can analyze the data, especially when you want to see the combination of independent variables which lead to the specific outcome of the dependent variable. That's being said, you may recall that when we do a multiple linear regression or we work on a structural equation modeling, we are trying to assess the effect of single independent variable on the dependent variable. Whether that single independent latent variable is a significant influencer of the outcome or the dependent variable, that is what we are assessing. But in configurational analysis, we look in for the combinations of these independent variables which lead to the specific outcome. Now, this means that there would be some necessary conditions and some sufficient conditions to achieve that outcome. Let me explain to you what I mean by necessary and sufficient conditions. Necessary conditions, if I take an example of baking a cake. So, necessary would be the ingredients which are required to make a cake. That is flour, sugar, eggs, and butter. But if I want to make a special cake, these are the necessary conditions, these are the necessary ingredients which are required. But for a special cake, I would require some dry fruits, some specific icing, some fruit gel, and several other ingredients, which can be said as sufficient ingredients or sufficient conditions to achieve the specific outcome that is a special cake. So, fsQCA helps us to know the necessary and sufficient conditions which lead to a specific outcome. It works on the principle of Boolean algebra, that is 0 and 1. fsQCA provides a systematic way to explore complex causal relationships, moving beyond symbol correlations to understand how combinations of conditions lead to specific outcomes. To capture these combinations of conditions that are sufficient for an outcome to occur, fsQCA uses both qualitative and quantitative assessments and computes the degree in which a case belongs to a set, thus creating a bridge between qualitative and quantitative methods. These are some of the steps which needed to be followed in order to do fsQCA analysis. First is defining the causal relationships based on the theory, extensive literature review which you have done, and you have the support for that causal relationship which you are trying to assess. It's crucial to define the scope of the study and the factors that might influence the outcome of interest. Second step is identifying the contrarian cases. This will help us in justifying the use of fsQCA. What are contrarian cases? We do their assessment in SPSS, not in fsQCA software. So these are those cases which are different from majority of the cases. Say in case I'm trying to find out the effect of dining experience on customer satisfaction. So better the dining experience, better is the customer satisfaction. That is something which is provided to me by the theory. So majority of the respondents would be having this kind of a positive correlation between dining experience and the satisfaction level. But in a survey, it's not unusual to expect that certain respondents would be giving me a response in an opposite manner, which might be due to several reasons. So they are known as contrary cases. In that case, a good dining experience might not lead to the good satisfaction level. So once we identify that there are certain contrarian cases in our data set, then we can go ahead with fsQCA. The third step is data calibration. Raw numerical data is transformed into fuzzy set membership scores. This involves assigning values between 0 and 1, representing the degree to which a case belongs to a particular set. That is, fully in, fully out, or somewhere in between. So if you are measuring the responses on a Likert 7-point scale, in that case, fully in will mean 7, fully out will mean 1, and somewhere in between will mean 4. So that is how we can calibrate the scale in case we have taken the responses on Likert 7-point scale. Direct calibration, which is done using theoretical or substantive principle, is a common approach. Fourth step is generating the truth table. A truth table lists all possible combinations of the causal conditions and their corresponding outcome scores, helping to identify patterns and potential relationships. Then the truth table is analyzed to determine the necessary and sufficient conditions for the outcome. As I've already told you, what are necessary and what are sufficient conditions for the outcome. This involves identifying the combinations of causal conditions that consistently lead to the outcome, considering factors like consistency and coverage. fsQCA provides different solutions like complex, parsimonious, and intermediate. It's seen that intermediate solution is the most reliable one and most often used by researchers. I'll be showing you practically how to do this fsQCA using a sample dataset in the upcoming videos. For now, we shall just understand the steps and the procedure to conduct fsQCA and what are the principles behind fsQCA. The sixth step is testing the predictive validity. That is done by dividing the original sample into subsample and holdout sample. Again, this can be done in SPSS. And then comparing the results of subsample with the holdout sample using XY plot. Now, how this is done, of course, I'll be making a video on testing the predictive validity for the purpose of fsQCA. Interpretation. Finally, the results of the analysis, including the identified configurations and their associated consistency and coverage, are interpreted and presented. Researchers must carefully consider the different solution types and their implications. Now, these are the some of the useful resources which you must refer to, and we must acknowledge the contribution of Professor Charles Ragan, who has given this wonderful tool fsQCA for the analysis of data, especially for the social sciences research. He has also provided a guide, that is User's Guide to Fuzzy Set Qualitative Comparative Analysis, which you can easily download from the software's website. You can download the software also from fsQCA website and then start using. Now, there is one very important paper I came across, that is by Papas and Woodside, that is Fuzzy Set Qualitative Comparative Analysis, Guidelines for Research Practice in Information Systems and Marketing. Now, I've downloaded this paper. This is freely available on Science Direct. You can download it. And I would say this is something which tells you practically how to do this analysis, under what circumstances you should adapt fsQCA, and how you should go about it. I'll be showing you this paper and glimpses the important parts of this paper. So this is the paper by Papas and Woodside, 2021, International Journal of Information Management. Now it lays down the guidelines how to do fsQCA and how to interpret the results. Now you see, it also tells us about the different advantages of fsQCA over the traditional methods. Analyzing alternative configuration enables systematic and holistic views of information system and marketing environments. Qualitative comparative analysis is useful for inductive, deductive, and abductive reasoning and for remarkably useful theory building, theory elaboration, or theory testing. So that is the importance of fsQCA. I'll just highlight some of the important points in this paper. Then afterwards you can download it and read it for yourself. fsQCA addresses an important limitation of CSQCA, the fact that variables are binary. CSQCA means crisp set qualitative comparative analysis, thus restricting the analysis as it cannot fully capture the complexity in cases that naturally vary by level or degree. So fsQCA is able to overcome several limitations of both CSQCA and MVQCA and has received increased attention recently. Because when applied together with complexity theory, it provides the opportunity to gain deeper and richer insight into data. Going further, now, case-based techniques such as fsQCA and cluster analysis have been employed as a way of moving beyond variance-based methods. Cluster analysis, which we often do in SPSS. These two techniques have similarities as they both employ multidimensional spaces, and often people ask how fsQCA differs from cluster analysis and why do we need it? The main difference is that the kind of research question they are able to address. Cluster analysis answers questions such as which cases are more similar to each other, and that's how we devise the clusters through hierarchical cluster analysis or k-means cluster analysis. While fsQCA can identify the different configurations that constitute sufficient and or necessary conditions for the outcome of interest. Going further, the authors have beautifully presented the basic steps in fsQCA. You see here basic steps in fsQCA. They have explained that once you have the sample, do the contrarian case analysis and then choose the threshold, data treatment, transform data into fuzzy sets, choose thresholds for direct calibration, calibrate data in fsQCA software. Then generate the truth table and sort the truth table by frequency and consistency and arrive at the solutions. Three types of solution: complex, parsimonious, and intermediate. Intermediate is the most reliable and often used. It's a stable solution. And then you report the fsQCA findings. And you can do predictive validity also to establish the validity of your results. Shows how well the model predicts the dependent variable in additional samples. Now, this paper is quite good if you read it with care and you understand each and every line which is mentioned by the authors. And that is why I recommend you to go through this paper, read it well in case you are interested to employ fsQCA in your next research article. Of course, I'll be giving you a practical demo of how to do this fsQCA analysis in the upcoming videos. For now, my purpose was to make you familiar with fsQCA analysis so that I can show you the relevance, the importance, and the practical aspect in the upcoming videos. Thanks for watching and do share it with your friends and faculty colleagues. Keep watching for more.